Good morning and welcome everyone to this week's Expert Insight series. We are very, very excited to be talking about international immigration and investment. Many of us have been looking at this as an opportunity, whether it's somewhere where we're looking to invest in property for a future sort of B plan, or whether we are looking to emigrate with ourselves and our family in the coming months or next year. So with so many immigration opportunities available to South Africa, we really wanted to this week have a look at two very key destinations. You know, we often talk a lot about Mauritius because of its location and its environment, being quite close to South Africa, but there are a number of other appealing locations to South Africans where we've seen many people emigrate to or invest in over the last few years. In fact, is we have a business partner of ours that have worked very closely with American Dreams, and they themselves have emigrated across to America. And he previously spoke about his experience with that process, and you can see that content on our site. So this morning, we have a wonderful panel with us, but I think before we get to that panel, I'm just going to run through some housekeeping so we're all on the same page. Many of you have participated in our webinars before. So just to run through it, we have a little chat box. It's a chat icon at the bottom of your screen. You click on it. If you select on the drop-down menu, everybody, that will enable you to ask your questions to the panel and to what is behind the panel, the teams that are there to answer any of these questions, and they'll be able to see and engage with you in real time as we run through the presentations and the discussions this morning. We will also do our best to tackle some of these key questions that have come through to us via when you registered. I had a number of questions. I also received a number of requests for the recording. So this webinar is being recorded, and the content will be distributed in the coming days. So the other part of the webinar, which is a little bit of housekeeping, is our poll questions. The poll questions will pop up onto your screen, as it has one is done now. I'll be very, very grateful if you can answer that poll question. And once you've answered it, or if you're a panelist, just click on the red toggle on the corner, and that will remove it from your line of sight so that you have unobstacled, I'm sure that's not a word, unobstacled view of the actual webinar. So let us just get going. So today we have identified two key spaces, the one being Cyprus, paradise, an absolute paradise. And many of you know Jenny from Cypriot Realty. She has been working on Cyprus. She has offices in Cyprus. She often comes to South Africa. She is a South African, and she has been spearheading the campaign around this Plan B. And she's going to talk to us this morning a little bit more about where the value is, and where it lies for South African citizens. The second country, and not just a small country, but the second largest and possibly one of the most popular destinations, is the USA. So Stuart represents American Dreams, or 12-Star Capital, and they're going to talk to us a little bit about an investment program that will enable you and your family to move across to America and access some of the opportunities they have in the States. And I'm not going to give the game away too much there. But let us get going. We have 45 minutes. The time goes very, very quickly. So I think we're going to start off with a bit of sunshine and ocean and paradise with Cyprus. And Clem has got a video for us. If you could pop that on.
There is an island in the Mediterranean where prosperity is a way of life. Since ancient times, Cyprus has been a stepping stone between civilizations. Graced with vast stretches of coastline and 340 days of sunshine per year, Cyprus is a natural paradise. A warm and friendly lifestyle with a vibrant culture and art scene. An excellent sampling of Mediterranean tastes and a love of leisure. From its secluded beaches to its majestic mountains, Cyprus is a world of everything. Taste its flavorful gastronomy. Get to know its rich and fascinating history. Cyprus's unique advantage make it not only an amazing place to visit, but also one of the best destinations to call home. Residents and tourists alike enjoy all that Cyprus has to offer, whether it's the friendly warmth of the local people or the warmth of the island's sun. Cyprus welcomes the world.
Certainly does look like paradise, Jenny. Thank you so much. Let's hand over to you, and you can just tell us a little bit more about the opportunities that Cyprus present.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Lou, and welcome everybody to today's seminar. What I'm going to talk about today is why South Africans have actually fallen in love with the country. So the first things that we just need to be aware of is that the geographic location of the island itself, just in terms of where it's located with regards to the rest of the world. This slide is a little bit grainy, but it does kind of give you the overview of just how centrally located the island is. It's very easy to get around to Moscow if you want to have negotiations with Putin, especially with what's happening at the moment. You want to nip across the pond, go and do some shopping in Milan, or even to get from South Africa, it's not that onerous at all to be able to get to the country. At Cyprus, at a glance, it's not the hugest island in the Mediterranean, although it is the third largest, not part of Greece at all. But the big important factor is that this is a real small insular place that is not linked to the Greek economy, has wonderful climates, fantastic temperatures to go and have a look at, and it's a full member of the European Union. The big important factor for those of you that are a bit concerned about the link to what's happening in Europe is the stability of the economy. Well, if we have a look at this year, the predictions are 4.1% growth. And even next year, despite what's happening with Ukraine and the reality of the European Union, they're still looking at a decent expected growth for 2023 being at 3.5%. The big boys are quite happy. They're on a stable note when it comes to Moody's, Finch, Standard and Poor. So that gives a bit of confidence as well to people that are maybe looking at the financial aspects of the country just to see in terms of what's available. NUT's review earlier this year that came out is that Cyprus is the 6th most popular holiday destination for this year for people coming across from the United Kingdom. That's very important for my owners that have a property that they've invested in where they wanted to get a nice rental return, because it shows there's confidence. They want to come across, they want to spend their UK pounds. The Europeans love it, of course, because of the weather, and this is a big thumbs up for the country in its totality. Another massive important vote of confidence is how the property market sales have just escalated and gone off the scale completely. 1.3 billion euros worth of property sales to local and international investors just this first quarter of the year. That equates to 21.8 billion rand. Not a small investment when you're having a look at it, but it certainly shows that the world is very happy with what's happening in Cyprus. This is quite an important factor on the energy and the natural gas fields that have been found in the country, specifically with what's happening now in Europe, and Europe wanting to be less reliant on Russia, with Russia obviously coming down with what's happening in Ukraine. So this is an important factor, just showing you how all of the international boys are putting their stamps down. They're having a look at the exploration availability, and it shows that the sentiment around the world is saying that this is now where Europe needs to go. They want to be less reliant on the whole of the European, less on Russia, and much more reliant on one of their babies in the fold, which of course is Cyprus. They've in fact already invested in a massive pipeline, taking gas from Egypt through to the European Union, invested just under $1 trillion euros, and that's already in place, and that means that the whole of the world is looking to see what's going to happen with a lot of interest. As we move on to the next slide, we can actually see in terms of what's happening with some other developments in terms of the infrastructure. So Cyprus has got one of the largest resorts in Europe that's already in the process of being built. And it actually means that there's huge, again, investor confidence, another way for people to come across, enjoy the island and take it in terms of what's available from a holiday point of view. The medical facilities are first world. All of the doctors have been trained overseas. There is a medical a hospital that's opened up for training as well. So if we go into the next slide, we can actually see in terms of the universities that are available. So those of you that might be thinking about what are my children going to do, what are my grandchildren want to do, well, have a look at Cyprus, because this certainly will make something quite interesting for them from a scholar point of view and what they want to do in terms of their futures. The favorable tax regime is where Cyprus has a huge big thumbs up. First of all, there is zero inheritance tax. So what this means is that once you have your assets based in the country, we structure a will that protects your assets from having to fall part of your South African estate. Of course, you need to declare it. You need to be a good, old, honest civilian and do that. But the important factor here is if we have a look at the personal taxes, your first 328,000 Rand a year that you're going to be earning from your income from your investment property is tax exempt in the country. So that's a lot more money that's going to go into your savings accounts. We're going to look at the incredible lifestyle that's available, from snow in the mountains for 3 months of the year, I bet you didn't know that, to wonderful ports, marinas, facilities to go yachting, etc. Cyprus has it all in terms of what the island has for you as an investor, possibly to relocate, possibly to immigrate. Those of you looking at a second retirement option, well, why don't you look across the pond? This is a country that's got a lot available. So in terms of what we are talking about today, there are two real Plan B relocation or residency options. The first one on the next slide that we're going to look at is the fast track residency program. And then the sister next to it is known as the slow track program. So the fast track program is basically been voted as one of the best available in Europe at the moment. It's one of the few where 3 generations in the same family line all get permanent residency within 2 months of making application. There are some considerations. So if we have a look at the slide here, it's showing you even your adult dependent children up to the age of 25 will qualify as long as they are full-time students, as well as your folks and your folks-in-law. So this makes it a very interesting option in terms of what you're looking for a Plan B. Minimum investment is 300,000 euros. You do not need to put any money into a Cypriot bank. You do need to prove income, which is basically 30,000 euros per annum for the main investor, 5,000 euros for each dependent. And of course, like all of the countries require, clean criminal record and your proof of source of funds. It takes 2 months for the permanent residency program to be granted. You get permanent residency for life. It'll never get taken away from you. Yes, you can certainly use the property as an investment tool to earn some income. You do not have to live in the country for your residency to remain valid. There are 2 VAT structures. One is 5% if you're using this as your primary home. The other is 19% if you're using it as an investment tool. And you can, down the line, qualify for a passport once you've lived in the country for a number of years. The other program I spoke to you about a little earlier about is known as the slow track program. The reason I call it the slow track program is it has a little bit of difference in terms of what the fast track offers. First thing, dependent children over the age of 18 do not qualify. Mum and dad don't qualify, in-laws don't qualify. But where it does have some advantages is it's quite unique in terms of what other facilities it has. So if you put the property together, a number of you who are not related, your friends, you can pool your money together, you can put your adult children on the title deed, you can put mum and dad on the title deed. Everyone can qualify as their own individual applicant in terms of what the program allows you to do. That's a huge advantage, and not a lot of countries in Europe actually offer it. There's no minimum investment amount, unlike the fast track program. There is money you need to deposit into a Cypriot bank account, basically to be able to live off. You also need to prove income that you earn as 12,000 euros for the main applicant, 5,000 for each dependent. Like the fast track program, you need to have a clean police record and proof of your source of funds. Big difference between slow track and fast track. This is a 2-year process. So you start off as a temporary resident. You can, like the fast track, rent your property out. You do not have to live in the country. You only have to go back 1 day every 2nd year. The fees that you're going to be paying are transfer duty versus the VAT on the new property. And yes, like this fast track program, once you've lived in the country for a number of years, you can actually do the formal naturalization. So this on this slide gives you a big difference between the two. So the 2 generations qualify on the slow track versus 3 on the fast. no minimum investment on the slow track program. You don't have to put money on the Cypriot bank account on the fast track program, 2 years versus 2 months, and permanent residency immediately versus the temporary residency on the slow track. For those of you that are possibly looking at Cyprus as your new home, you can do the immigration route, which is a little bit different to both of the investment programs, because what it does is it basically means that's a whole different program that you need to do. You don't need to invest in property. You can actually take out a rental agreement. The big thing is getting your documentation from South Africa. We can help you with opening up your offshore bank account. So that can all be done before you even make that decision to move across. And then, of course, you need to chat to some experts about your financial immigration, ticking off the boxes. One big important factor there is once you've arrived in the country, we will assist you apply for your work permit, because on the immigration program, you can work. We'll help you secure your national health insurance so that you can be part of that. And after 6 months of living in the country, we'll help you convert your driver's license to an EU one, so which makes a lot of example. Clem, as you whip through the next slides, just showing some of the property examples that Cyprus has, the most important factor is that on the western side, which I call the Cape Town of Cyprus, there's a lot of lifestyle availability, villa estates that we're used to, properties that are right by the edge of the side of the Mediterranean. You have your traditional homes that we're used to, like we are in South Africa. Beautiful estates that are set on the top of hills. If you're looking for apartment style living, all of this you can actually get within the island itself, and lovely opportunities to be able to get into the market, to be able to use this as a really nice, strong rental yield. A lot of townhouse developments where you can own apartments, you can own standing villas that are linked to it. But the big important factor is that there's a very, very high demand for rentals, both short-term and long-term. And in fact, because of this demand, we've launched out, and 3 years ago, we launched Cypriot Realty Rentals, which specializes in the short-term rental market. And this is a big advantage because you have magnificent rental yields. We're looking as much as between 8 and 10%, even 12% on the short-term rental, which in Europe terms is unheard of. And even your long-term guests that are coming in for maybe looking at long-term tenancies, you're looking at a high demand because there's just not available stock. Especially what's been happening with Ukraine as well. We find a lot of those people that have come across, they're now wanting to make Cyprus their more future home. This is the time, investors. The traditional markets and real estates are definitely bouncing back. You want to be close to the edge of the Mediterranean where you can see the sea, maybe hear the waves. The favorable property tax options are a big plus. The permanent residency legislation, I do think they're going to be changing it like a lot of the countries do. And this is a window of opportunity that you need to certainly explore. There's a partnership that exists to make your dream a reality. And this is where we're going to explain a little bit more about where I can help and what I can actually help you get involved with. Those of you that are looking to start your own business, remember now Europe could be your new playground. This could be where your new business sets up shop. Because there is no import-export duty, you can certainly apply your trade there. I will help you open up your offshore bank account from South Africa. You don't need to be across on the island to be able to do it. We've got all the partners to help you with your foreign exchange. When you're ready to buy your property, we'll help you furnish it out, kit it out, get ready for your short or long-term rentals. We'll hold your hand while you're doing the full relocation. And of course, prime to all of this is able to help and choose your property for you to make sure it's going to tick all of your boxes. So now what? We've thought about the financial aspects. We've thought about the lifestyle aspects that Cyprus has. She's certainly a country that ticks a lot of boxes. What you now need to do is you need to consider coming across on an inspection tour. And this is very easy for you to do. This is a personalized meet and greet. We don't load you on a big bus or a big train and get you across the thing and everybody kind of looks around. This is your legal LSD trip. Look, see, discover. We're going to hold your hand. We're going to introduce you to an agent that will be with you to make the right kind of decision. I'll be there as your sense of stability to say, hold on a second. Your brief was this. You're spending a little bit more. Let's relook and go back to the drawing board and make sure that your property investment is going to make sense for you. At your diary convenience, come across. We have a number of tours that I'm going to be launching from September, where I've got a fixed number of investors coming at a certain period of time. Airline tickets from South Africa on either Qatar or Emirates, or anything from around about 11 to 14,000 Rand return, depending on the time that you're coming across. If you don't have a Schengen visa in your South African passport, we need to apply for a separate Cypriot visa. The embassy in Pretoria, you don't have to apply in person. It's a cheap amount of 20 euros. And the big important factor on this inspection trip is your first 3 nights are complimentary. It's on me. Thank you so much for your time for coming across. Thereafter, it's 100 euros per couple per night, and we extend it for the number of time that you need to stay. So what you need to do in essence is think about if you're going to be booking this trip. We'll be putting you up, as I said, at the beautiful 5-star Coral Beach Hotel located in Paphos. It's all laid on for you. You're going to feel like you're having a well-deserved but it's interesting holiday where we can look, see, discover together. And anything that you need from a plan B when you're looking at your European plan, consider Cyprus. It's certainly something worth having a look at and looking at a bit more seriously than you might have thought before.
Wow, Jenny, thank you so much. We obviously are recording this webinar, so you will be able to go through that content at your own leisure. I think there's a lot of incredibly valuable information that was shared. Just coming in from a question from our audience level, she is asking, what is the process to buy with a trust on residency? So if you're buying from a trust, does that affect the residency process at all, Jen?
Yeah, so basically, trust or an EU-based trust. They don't recognize trusts that are outside of the European Union purely because of the intricate intricacies of the actual trust setup itself. But it doesn't make sense to do it in a legal entity because there are so many tax breaks and favorable tax opportunities. It actually makes more sense to do it in your personal name, because if you're wanting to leave it in the legacy, you're going to have your will that's set up in your personal name, and there are not these onerous hidden taxes that you sometimes are facing within South Africa. So it makes much more sense to do it in your own personal capacity.
Okay, so I'll connect you with Lebo just so that you can, maybe there's more to it and you can just discuss that with her offline. But thank you so much for the question, and please continue to send us your questions. We do appreciate the feedback, and it also creates this opportunity where folks can engage. So, there's no denying that Cyprus is a beautiful country. You've worked very closely with the community when somebody is deciding between a fast track and a slow track process. How have you found that? Would you strongly recommend the fast track process, or does it really just depend on your personal circumstance?
Yeah, you see, Louise, it's all, first of all, a lot about budget. So if you don't have the 300,000 euros to be able to invest in a property, it doesn't make sense to follow that program anyway. The big advantage with the slow track program is that you can buy resale. And with the resales being readily available, it also means that you can start putting it on the market a bit quicker to be able to earn a rental yield. The other complexity, though, is what is your family situation? If you have got a really good job in South Africa and you may be concerned about mum and dad, put the property in your name, mum and dad automatically qualify, so do your dependent children. Or maybe you are in the fortunate position that you have an elderly child who you're lucky to be a grandparent, put the property in your child's name. You'll then obviously qualify as the investor. Then the grandkids are also part of the program, whereas on the slow track, that doesn't exist. So it's a very much an integrated and very personal conversation I need to have with everybody to understand what is your short, medium, and long-term plan, and how quickly do you want to get your residency, and is it a possibility you're just using it as a possible scapegoat, your insurance plan out of the country, or is this maybe more an investment strategy, or do I actually want to relocate? And based on the answers to those questions, we'll be able to see which option is a better one for you.
It's always a risky, I feel full to things, anxiety and risk when I invest in anything. But it is a risky investment looking at property, and you don't always get the positive media around international and offshore property. And there has been a lot of media around sort of folks that have invested in property offshore and it hasn't worked out in their favor. You're not there, you're not overseeing the property. Where does Cypriot come in to kind of block some of those holes and fill some of those gaps?
So, Louise, the big thing, as you mentioned at the start of the webinar, is that, first of all, I'm a South African girl. I've done the journey myself. Second of all, I'm based here in the island. So you have a team of South Africans who have got your interests at heart. I cannot reputationally stand the chance to do or promote anything where it will have any kind of backfiring on any note. So you've got a local girl with a local team. We're actually looking after your asset. We're making sure that things are moving very swiftly. When it comes to renting out your property, everything is done completely as per a dedicated process. We hold your hand from the start of the initial discussions all the way through to you buying the property. Eventually, when you want to put it on the resale list, we're there to give advice and help you on that front. So it's all about the partners that you're choosing to make your journey that much less onerous.
Thank you so much, Jen. And that's very, very true. It's about the partners that you're choosing. And that's the challenge, to find those right partners. And I think talking about right partners, let's have a look at an alternative on the other side, not quite on the other side, but certainly a distance away. The USA has become a very popular destination for many South Africans. It's a slightly different type of investment strategy, and a very interesting one, and a very successful one, in that it has been around for a number of years and it keeps evolving. So before we move on to Stuart and the American Dream, let's have a quick look at the video. So if Clem, you would mind popping that on. Okay, thanks, Clem.
Live, work, study, or build a business anywhere in the United States. With 100% success rate, the American Dream Team provides the simplest route to US residency. You and your family can achieve United States citizenship by investing into the EB-5 investment program. Live the American Dream. Find out more by visiting www.americandream-eb5.com.
Welcome, Stuart, and thank you so much for being with us today. We look forward to hearing what this opportunity can bring. So I'll hand over to you.
Great. Louise, thanks very much. And Jenny, as always good to be on webinars with you. We were sharing notes before we started this. Jenny and I have been sort of on the same platform since about 2007, 2008. So we're somewhat of veterans in terms of people that have been assisting South Africans looking at Plan Bs and Plan As. Louise, I think I'd like to just maybe start to say that alternative residency and citizenship programs are ever evolving. And I think that for South Africans that are considering it, now is a prudent time to really start aggressively considering and moving forward. Certainly, I think that we've seen a lot of updates coming out of the European Union in terms of overhauling a lot of their residency and citizenship programs. And in fact, they recently announced that they would like to see the phasing out of residency programs by 2025. Whether they get that right or not is still to be seen. We've also seen the suspension of some programs. And I think more importantly, with the United States as an option, we finally have had a new legislation come into play, which has given the EB-5 program long-term reauthorization, which is really great news. It's something which we as industry have been waiting for a long period of time. So my slides are really going to be focused on more around the new legislation that's come into play. I think that your audience are familiar with the process in terms of getting into the US through the EB-5 program, but I'm going to really focus around the new Reform and Integrity Act. If we could just go to that slide. So this was formally signed by President Biden on the 11th of March. And what it now does is it gives long-term reauthorization of the EB-5 program through to September 2027. So historically, the EB-5 program has been a pilot program. It's always come to, it's had various expiry dates and it's had various renewals. And we're really blessed to have this EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act of 2022. It's a big overhaul. It provides a lot of integrity measures for investors that are investing into the program. And it really just makes the EB-5 program a lot more credible than it possibly historically was. So to a large degree, my presentation slides are going to focus on how this new act protects existing investors, how it will impact future investors. And Clem is going to start just doing some slides. In terms of a little bit of the projects that we've been involved in, these are some of our past projects. This was Arlington Downs. It was in Chicago, a multifamily. Block 40, this was in South Florida, in a city called Hollywood, just outside Fort Lauderdale. That was a combination of a mixed use and ground floor retail. We then did some student res in Florida. We like student res as an asset class. So this is on one of the largest campuses in Florida, known as Gainesville. We did a very, very large project known as Hollywood Circle. That was a 250 million capex project, mixed use, 400 condo units, big ground floor retail with a anchor tenant being Publix. That building's performing exceptionally well. It's stabilized at on the residential section at 95%. We did a small refurbishment of a hotel in Kansas City. I like refurbishments for those that are considering EB5. Relatively low risk because you've got a shell and you're really just going to refurb it. And then in terms of projects that we're going to be bringing to the market, we are very excited about this Minneapolis project. I know the city of Minneapolis very well, and we're really looking forward to it. That will be a multi-family one. And then we're also looking at a project in Montana, in Big Sky Country. In fact, that's with Kersner International, a name that's known to South Africans. So they've got a big resort with the one and only brand. So we're hoping to bring that one to the project. And then we've got another smaller one in Colorado, which is the expansion of a ski resort in a small town of Crested Butte. So we certainly have got great projects. I think that anybody that is considering to go into the US through the EB5 program, obviously the identification of a project and understanding its capex and how the return of your capital will come back to you once you've gone through the immigration process is very important. In terms of the new regulations, obviously we went into a bit of a holding pattern while we were waiting for the new Reform Act to come into play. But those reforms are now in place, and the good news is that adjudications has now commenced. And for those that have subscribed, they're not required to increase their subscription amount in terms of the new investment thresholds. So I think that the most important one that I'd like to focus on is the concurrent filing, or what we know as a status of adjustment. So in terms of people who are pending or have I-526 approvals that they're awaiting adjudication, we now have the ability, dependent on what visa category they may currently have, for them to in fact enter the United States, do a status of adjustment, and then in June, we're hoping for premium processing, which would allow them to get work authorization and travel docs. And that's a major, major deal changer. Historically, in the past, we've had to wait for the adjudication or for the file to be approved, and that historically has taken up to 2 years. We now, with the new legislation, have the ability for somebody to file, enter the United States, do a status of adjustment, get work authorization, and have the ability to physically, settle down and get on with a new life in the United States. In terms of the new investment criteria, the investment criteria has now been increased to $800,000. So that is what one would need to be investing, and that's within what we call a TA, target employment area. For those that are investing outside of a TA, the investment amount is $1,050,000. And I think more importantly, from an EB5 aspect, the new bill makes provisions for annual increments. So once again, I urge, there's a sense of urgency because obviously the investment threshold will continuously increase on a annual basis. I think the other important aspect for EB5 investors, or those that are potentially looking at going through this program, is that they've now derived that 20% of the availability of visas will go to what we call rural projects, and 10% will go to high employment areas, and then obviously 2% towards infrastructure periods. So in terms of the identification of a project, it's going to be very important for EB5 investors to identify where the visa category will be allocated in terms of the ability for them to be sort of fast-tracked. The other important one is that children are protected under the Child Protection Status Act. So long as you file before your children are 21, they would form part of your family as derivatives. So in the case that they age out during the adjudication process, they are protected. I think the other important thing to realize is EB5 is a fast track to a green card, which leads to naturalization. And once you're naturalized and a passport holder, then you can start with family-based sponsorship. So it's very easy for children to sponsor their parents in. That at the moment is taking about 5 months. And then obviously you've got what we call additional family-based sponsorship in terms of chain migration, in terms of having the ability to sponsor brothers and sisters, which obviously have got slightly longer timelines. The other nice thing with the new program is that you do have the ability to switch programs. So historically, you would have invested and been tied to a certain project to meet your immigration criteria. Now you do have the ability that if that project has been completed and the developers want to offload it, you have the ability to switch to another project and it doesn't affect your immigration timeline. And then I think the most important thing for me is the whole aspect related to reforms and integrity. Remember, it is a vast amount of money that you're investing, and it's important to know that there are certain integrity measures. So right as of now, all these regional centers that promote these projects in the United States have had to resubmit and be reauthorized. So we will be able to start subscribing from the 14th of this month. And obviously with the reauthorization process, they're doing additional layers of protection. And then the other important thing is that the Department of Homeland Security is now going to be responsible for the designation of TEAs. So just really great integrity measures. And then obviously people like myself now need to be authorized with the United States, with the USCIS to physically be offering this as an opportunity. So all around, it's just a great reform. And I think certainly the fact that we've now got long-term reauthorization to 2027 is just great news.
Thank you so much, Stuart. So just if we go back, for me, if I look at this compared to some of the other presentations that we have participated with you on, I think the previous investment threshold was 500,000. So that has shifted up now to a minimum of 800,000. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And then, but by the looks of it, there's a larger number of projects that one can invest in that you are participating in. So I think maybe we could. So for anyone that hasn't sat in one of these, hasn't heard of this particular EB5 program, maybe Stuart, you can just give a little summary of what the general gist is of the program for those who haven't heard of it before.
Right. So Louise, I mean, EB5 stands for employment based, and it's program number 5. So it's in revision number 5. But the reality is that the EB5 program really is a job creation program. So an investor will identify a project that is aligned to an immigration benefit. So these projects need to be authorized by immigration. So you can't just identify a building and say, well, that building generates a certain number of jobs and I'd like to invest in it and get an immigration benefit. So these projects are pre-vetted by immigration and get authorized under an offering. So EB5 is really around job creation. So anybody that's considering doing an EB5 investment would focus on the project and its job creation. And that job creation is a combination of direct jobs and indirect jobs. So typically, direct jobs are created during construction and indirect jobs are post-construction. And typically what one would do is, and there are different mechanisms to invest, you'd either go in as pref equity. In other words, you sit alongside the developer. Or in some cases, you go through a loan structure where you're loaning your money to the project for a very specific period of time. And in return, they're going to derive you an immigration benefit and then the return of your capital. So I think the important thing to note here is it's one of the very few programs where you make a capital investment, it gives you an immigration benefit, and your capital comes back to you.
So if I look, so I then would say, and I know it's open to myself, my family members, depending on who is making that investment and how you structure, and that's where your team would come in. So if I had this dinner table discussion, and you talk about, I want to immigrate to America, and the first thing that comes to mind is my green card. I want a green card. So what is the difference between going through an EB-5 program and looking at this type of investment structure for immigration versus applying for a green card and trying to find a job and go in through that mechanism, or looking to start a business without an immigration system?
A great question, Louise. I think that the biggest benefit is with EB-5 is your next, once you've made the investment, the next thing that pops out is the green card. So you immediately have the ability to settle down, enroll kids in schools, and carry on life normally. There are obviously a number of other visa categories which are longer paths to possibly leading to a green card. But certainly we find even a lot of our South African entrepreneurs, they would like to ensure that they have secured the green card for their children, and their preferred methodology is in fact to go through the EB-5 program, guarantee themselves and their family a green card, and then look at business opportunities on the ground. You know, the US is vast, so it's very difficult for an entrepreneur here in South Africa to possibly jump in deep and just, acquire a business and hope that designs a immigration path for him. So the EB-5 absolutely guarantees that you'll get a green card. We've never ever had a single decline.
That's an excellent reference. So once I've made my investment, and I'm assuming like any investment, there's a period to that investment. You mentioned that you then get the return, which is one of the few residency programs that will offer you that. Is it the return, your return of your initial investment plus the capital appreciation, or is it the return of the initial investment?
So it's the return of your capital, and in some cases, project dependent, they're going to offer you a percentage return on that capital. So each project is unique, but certainly in all cases, you should get your capital back.
And I'm assuming that these projects are highly vetted by yourself and the team before you, put your stamp of approval behind them.
Yeah. So Louise, we've never been involved in a project that suffered a capital failure. I think that projects have had difficult timelines. I mean, we've been through COVID. We were very blessed. We had no construction delays on any of our sites. Certainly we had some issues related to the stabilization of some of those properties, which has maybe extended the timeline a little bit longer than one had hoped. But we do provide our investors with full DD links, and those go right down to business plan submissions, down to economic reports, down to forecasts and projections. So obviously one looks at what the exit strategy is in terms of how they intend to return your capital. And part of that would be understanding how their project stabilizes. And, that's really my task, is to try and get investors to really understand what they're investing in and what the exit strategies are. And I think similarly to like Jenny, I mean, we always really encourage investors to physically go, take a trip, meet the developers, walk the sites, get to understand that the project does stand on its own 2 feet. And certainly immigration is a big step. So, and certainly the US is a big place. So you do need to spend time as you make that journey.
My very last question, just regarding the capital investment, is there opportunities to loan that investment fund, the 800,000, from various resources or leverage against existing assets?
Great question. Great question, Louise. So up until recently, we weren't able to use loan proceeds for EB5. But there was a court ruling which now allows us to utilize loan proceeds. So what is becoming very, very popular amongst South Africans that are looking at plan A's or plan B's are to in fact gear against their portfolios for an immigration benefit. So we work very closely with family offices, the likes of Calio Capital, and they assist our clients in terms of trying to design a mechanism to actually fund these alternative residency programs. So yes, you can use gearing, you can use loans, you can borrow money from family members. So, but like Jenny's program, obviously there's a lot of scrutinization that takes place in respect to the source of funds. The money needs to come from a legitimate source.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you very much to Jenny and to Stuart and to the team that are behind the scenes answering the questions. Thank you to everybody who's attended today. We will continue with this journey looking at international immigration and investment opportunities. If you would like to, for me to connect you with any of the panelists, please feel free to drop me an email, louise@estate-living.co.za. Clem, if you could drop that into the box for me, into the chat box. And we will continue this, and we can happy to take this conversation offline if you have more personal questions, or if you're a little further down your process and you're really wanting to say, okay, I've made my decision, this is what I want to do, and you need those guiding hands, because as Jenny mentioned, it really is relationship based, and we have, it's a lot of, it's your future. So you want to make sure that you have the right team in place to help you with that. Thank you very much to everybody, and I hope you all have a wonderful day further. If you could pop the video on. Hey, oh, yeah.